Live from Washington, D.C., Jay Sekulow Live. Phone lines are open for your questions right now. And now, Chief Counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow.
Hey, everybody. Well, the news, of course, this weekend is the situation has escalated with North Korea. The president saying the time for strategic patience is over. You've had a Intercontinental Ballistic Missile test that went almost 700 miles into the Sea of Japan. That's a missile capable of reaching Alaska. The interesting comments now coming out from the combined statement on alliance response. Let me read you this quote from General Brooks. Self-restraint, which is a choice, is all that separates armistice and war. As this alliance missile live fire shows, we're able to change our choice when so ordered by our alliance national leaders. It would be a grave mistake for anyone to believe anything to the contrary. The headline in the Wall Street Journal is, the U.S. tells North Korea it's prepared to go to war. This is a very strategic time and a very strategic situation developing, Jordan, right now.
Yeah, I mean, these are not, this again, kind of in comparison to what's happening in Syria, where you cannot just look at this as North Korea and the United States. If North Korea was isolated in a, let's say it was, an isolated area that did not border China, Russia, and South Korea, you could take stronger military action immediately. But right now, any kind of action you take, first of all, we've got thousands of troops right in firing distance of North Korean artillery. Seoul, South Korea, a major international capital, millions of people that would be in range of just small artillery fire. So if you take any kind of direct action, you're not just putting your own troops in harm's way. It's not the U.S. and North Korea. You've got the Russians, the Chinese, and of course then South Korea, which would be the target of North Korean aggression.
The president sent out via Twitter that basically the Chinese have not helped here. So much for the Chinese assistance on this is basically what he said.
Well, I mean, the Chinese are the reason why this leadership in North Korea, the people are already starving there. The people are treated horribly. But they have bought into this kind of ideology.
Almost like a deity. They view him as a deity.
I mean, remember, there are enough millions of people there, including a military who is pretty mistreated. I mean, you look at them, they look malnourished, even the military, even their special forces, and they don't overthrow the government because they bought into the idea of this as being a god-like figure for decades, this family.
Intergenerationally.
Yeah, for 3 now. Right. And because of that, how do you starve out the regime?
Not the people. So we're talking about starving out the regime. Because the people are starving as it is. But how do you starve out the regime? What's the penalty for the regime for the actions they're taking?
Yeah, so he's not able to eat, fine meats and liqueurs every day and have whatever he wants in the world because of the Chinese. It all operates through China in relationships with Russia, but it's primarily China propping up the economy. That may work when North Korea is not being aggressive, but
when they're aggressive, not so much.
But no, it doesn't, because that's the reason why they even have the money to test intercontinental ballistic missiles.
Is because of the Chinese. So we have to understand that what's going on here. We're going to be joined by our 2 senior military analysts. And by the way, Colonel Skip Ash was based in Korea, so he will be able to give us some firsthand impressions of what can and cannot be done in that regard. The situation with North Korea, very, very serious. The ACLJ engaging at the United Nations and our offices around the globe. Your support of the ACLJ makes a big difference. We're in a matching challenge campaign, which means anything you donate to the ACLJ, we get a matching gift for you. Do that at aclj.org, or you can call us at 1-877-989-2255. That's aclj.org or 877-989-2255. Back with more in just a moment.
It is a critical time for our nation, and the American Center for Law and Justice is on the front lines, defending life and liberty, engaging the issues that matter most to you and your family. Whether it's working to protect Americans from the dangers of radical Islam and the persecution of Christians, to defending life at the U.S. Supreme Court, to protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms, we could not do this work without you, without your support. And now your support can really make a tremendous difference. For a limited time, you can participate in the ACLJ Matching Challenge. If you make a gift now, it will be doubled. $25 becomes $50. A $100 gift becomes $200. Please stand with the ACLJ right now and call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or go online at aclj.org. Thank you for your support.
Hey, welcome back to the broadcast. I mean, obviously, the issue with Korea front and center. I want to play for you what the president said just last week on this time for strategic patience, which is kind of the Obama administration's view on this. Here's what he said, very clear.
The era of strategic patience with the North Korean regime has failed. Many years, and it's failed. And frankly, that patience is over.
All right, I'm going to bring Skip Ash, Colonel Skip Ash and Colonel Wes Smith into the conversation, but I want to go, Jordan. There is the political side of this as well, because the president has to. We've got alliances, and as Skip's going to share in a moment, there's some very interesting intertwining here of who's on which team. I mean, it's very, very, because you got the Chinese, you got the Russians, and the Iranians.
Well, and it's not so much that the Chinese love the North Koreans. I mean, I think that needs to be clear. It's that they don't want to have to deal with the fallout of the North Korean regime falling apart, and then in the mass influx of people across borders. That is why Russia has basically set up a military line of defense, not because they're worried about North Korea firing upon them, but because they're worried that if that regime was to fall, because of U.S. action, which could happen, very quickly, right? As we've seen before, that they would have such an influx of a humanitarian crisis that these are not countries that necessarily have the resources, Russia, and then the Chinese, to deal with that kind of humanitarian crisis. So
let's look at the military side here. Let me go to Skip first. Skip, you served in South Korea. You were right on the DMZ. Give us your impression of what's at play right now, and what are the president says the time for strategic patience is over. What does that leave us with?
Well, that means we have to take some action pretty quickly through the UN and unilaterally if we have to, and that is we need to talk to our allies. We need to make sure that we cut off the connection between Iran and North Korea. These are two pariah states, and they deal with each other freely. We also have, that's where a lot of the money comes into North Korea, as they transfer technology, which is dangerous to Israel and ourselves, into the Middle East. We also have an interesting tie with Japan. There's a group of Koreans living in Japan that actually run a gambling syndicate where they make a lot of money, and that money is transferred by ship to the North Koreans once or twice a week. And the
Japanese government knows this is going on?
They've known it's been going on for years, and they've tried to do that because they thought that would sort of limit some of the options. They would be more friendly toward Japan, knowing that they depended on Japan for money. So it's one of these strange bedfellows things with all these interconnecting concerns within the region.
Yeah, you're probably not getting that kind of conversation in a lot of the other broadcasts you're listening to. But as I said, Skip served as a commander in the region. So you got the Japanese. So because the Japanese have to feel threatened, Skip, by the North Korea action, though, because it was aimed at the Sea of Japan.
Oh, definitely. In fact, the Japanese Congress or their parliament has begun to pass laws. Their constitution says they have to be. They can't militarize. They're now in the process of remilitarizing, which has to cause concern throughout the region, especially amongst the Chinese and the Koreans, because of the past militarization.
All right, so Colonel Smith, let's talk about the significance of an ICBM, Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. Right. That was the first time they've been able to do that.
First time they've done that. They've had medium-range ballistic missiles, but this is an ICBM that was capable. It crashed about 580 miles into the Sea of Japan, but based on its trajectory and going into outer space and coming back in, reentry, which is required of an ICBM, they estimate that it could reach the entire state of Alaska. Yeah. And, of course, what is troubling about this, Jay, is not only that they have this technology, but North Korea claims, And our intelligence community does not believe the claim, but we don't know. They claim they have already miniaturized a thermonuclear weapon that they could place on this missile. So it's a crisis on so many levels. It's probably the greatest crisis that we have faced in the United States as far as our security goes in several years. Yeah, maybe decades. Jordan, you just said cut him off. This is the leader of North Korea. Cut him off from the rest of the world. Right now, he's enjoying pretty much a pass. These people are starving, and the military is starving, but he's not. And his top elites, I mean, they're always, he could execute any of them at any time, but day to day, they live a lifestyle which is, again, it's luxurious in a country that is starving, and they continue to live that lifestyle. And so when he can have whatever he wants basically at his disposal, and his elite, and he can give that to his elites as well. That's why, you know, you see Pyongyang now, a lot of those buildings are empty, but you see the rest of the country. I mean, look at the maps of the electricity. There's basically, that's the only city with electricity running all of the time. Yet he's able to prop that up because of the Chinese primarily. Now, that may work when they're not launching ICBMs. Right. But when they start doing that, you have to put the pressure on China to say, this regime needs to be starved out. Yeah. He needs to be able to not have access to food. He should not be able to feed his family, just like the rest of North Koreans who can't feed their family. You do that, and things may quiet down. But they do view him as, I want everybody to understand, they view him as a deity. Right. I mean, this is a third-generational aspect. I want to go ahead and play a statement from Admiral Harry Harris, who is our U.S. Pacific Command head. It's very sobering. I mean, this is what he said.
All nations need to take this threat seriously because North Korea's missiles point in all directions. North Korea's capabilities are not yet an existential threat to America, but if left unchecked, it will eventually match the capability to hostile rhetoric. So what the Admiral's saying is that their actions may actually reach the same as their rhetoric if they're left unchecked. So then it begs the question, which we'll get into, what do we do? What are the options that we have in the United States? Let's go ahead and take a call, Logan. All right, let's go to Michael, who is calling from California on line 1. Michael, you're on the air. Hi, Michael. Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to see the House committee action yesterday to rescind the authorization for use of force. Wouldn't that be trying to limit President Trump's ability to move to fight anywhere without going through Congress?
So you're talking about the ability of the president to take military action, Skip, without an act of war.
If you have wars imminent under international law and under domestic law, the president's primary responsibility is to protect the people of the United States, and therefore he can take action in the face of imminent threat to the United States, and Congress in the past has followed up afterwards to make their statement about that. But he has an obligation as Commander-in-Chief to do what he deems necessary at the time to protect us, and that means he doesn't have to wait for a declaration of war or an authorization. It's always good, and those things need to happen. But if there's an emergency, he has the authority from the Constitution.
Are we, in your view, Skip, militarily, are we at the emergency stage yet, or are we getting very close? Where do you see it?
I think we're getting very close. I think we need to take strong diplomatic steps, and we need to see if the international community, especially Russia and China, if they're going to support us with a UN Security Council resolution that has real teeth in it, then we'll know where we are.
So the Security Council's meeting today. You know, China, as you pointed out before we went on air, Wes, China's chairing it. Right. And you're also pointing out in your comments that yesterday's missile was fired from a mobile launcher, making it more difficult to predict and to counter. It was a Chinese-made truck mobile launcher that was used. Yes. So what are the chances of the Chinese engaging at the UN here, in your view?
I think that's not likely to happen at all. Of course, the presidency of the Security Council rotates month by month. This just happens to be China's month. We were the president last month. China's rhetoric and their offers of help, I think, are pretty hollow.
I think the president's kind of the president sees that too right now.
The president tweeted this morning that trade in the first quarter of this year between North Korea and China went up 40%.
So those of you that are thinking that we just put pressure on China and that'll stop it, I mean, that does not appear to be the case.
That is not a viable option.
If they would actually do it, it might.
Right. The real key, short of military action, I think, is to somehow unite and galvanize the entire international community other than Russia and China. And as Jordan said, I mean, really isolate economically North Korea.
But let's talk about this, Jordan, the Iran connection here. And Skip, I want to go back to you on this. I mean, Iran's right in the middle of this.
Oh, that's right. I mean, they're kind of taking the technology they have, which they get from places like Russia now.
Yep.
Their missile systems, their missile defense systems, the ICBMs, the capabilities, they're exporting it to a regime. Now, you think about it like this. North Korea, with all of the sanctions against it, the fact they can't even feed their own people, how are they able to afford? Because with the Russians, they're not doing this for free, or the Iranians are not doing this for free. They're getting paid for this. So how are they able to spend this money? Where is that money coming from? And it's coming from the Chinese primarily, who are then giving the money to North Korea, and then North Korea is doing business with these countries.
Then, Skip, you said the Japanese government is aware of this gambling ring that's funding millions and maybe billions of dollars, and they're letting it go.
Well, they were. Again, they were trying to make sure that they stayed on the right side of the North Koreans. But I'd like to go back just to this Iranian connection again. Remember, many of the missiles that the Iranians are firing and testing, we can see that they are virtual clones of North Korean-developed missiles. So I think that's the North Koreans are getting oil, which they need, from the Iranians in turn for transferring military technology, which seems to be the only thing that the North Koreans can do well.
There is a lot more ahead to discuss. We've got a lot more to deal with, but the situation with North Korea, very, very serious. The ACLJ engaging at the United Nations and our offices around the globe. Your support of the ACLJ makes a big difference. We're in a matching challenge campaign, which means anything you donate to the ACLJ, we get a matching gift for you. Do that at aclj.org, or you can call us at 1-877-989-2255. That's aclj.org or 877-989-2255. Back with more in just a moment.
It is a critical time for our nation, and the American Center for Law and Justice is on the front lines, defending life and liberty, engaging the issues that matter most to you and your family. Whether it's working to protect Americans from the dangers of radical Islam and the persecution of Christians, to defending life at the U.S. Supreme Court, to protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms, we could not do this work without you, without your support. And now your support can really make a tremendous difference. For a limited time, you can participate in the ACLJ Matching Challenge. If you make a gift now, it will be doubled. $25 becomes $50. A $100 gift becomes $200. Please stand with the ACLJ right now and call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or go online at aclj.org. Thank you for your support.
We talk about the situation with North Korea. The Russia-China statement yesterday offering to mediate and suggesting that North Korea could stop nuclear research in exchange for U.S. To stop conducting defensive drills with South Korea and Japan. Skip, your reaction to that statement coming from the Russia and the Chinese.
I think it's ridiculous because nothing's going to stop the North Koreans from doing what they want. They'll do it in secret. They don't mind lying to the international community. They've already made all these agreements not to do what they're doing. So it doesn't matter, and we should not trust the word of the North Koreans or the Chinese and Russians.
And not only that, Jay, Japan and South Korea, for decades, they depend on the U.S. to defend them. And those drills and exercises that we do are defensive exercises. If we were to agree to this China-Russia suggestion and quit doing those in exchange for promises that North Korea will break immediately, it would totally change the balance of power in the Pacific realm, and Japan and South Korea would feel abandoned by us.
Yeah.
We are their protection.
So I want to ask the kind of we got a lot of calls, and we're going to get to those in a moment. The political consequence of this, and Logan, let's also get some comments coming on Facebook and Periscope. We'll take some calls as well, but go ahead.
I would say an action with North Korea would be more serious than sending 50,000 troops to fight ISIS. Seriously, the ramifications. You could do that. Our troops would be in harm's way. There would be casualties. But the international response. ISIS doesn't have the capabilities to fire upon. You take the Assad regime out in 2 minutes if you wanted to.
Right.
This is not like that. This is, you've got millions of people within small arms range artillery. So civilians, plus our troops, plus 2 other major world powers who are not necessarily on board with all of our decisions usually, Russia and China. So you'd have to have a lot of buy-in from the South Korean people would basically have to be willing to live in a kind of like the UK under the Blitzkrieg for a period of time to take this regime out. And you'd have to. You can't really take that action until you've got the buy-in from the people of South Korea.
All right, we'll take a call in a moment, but let me go right back to Skip Ash. Skip, you served there, so tell me where do you see it from the perspective of the South Koreans? What do they want to see happen? What's in their best interest? How does that work?
I think they want to avoid war at all costs. But I would say this. Remember, they have a new president, and the new president immediately stopped the United States from being able to bring in the Theater High Altitude Air Defense System for some reason. And we were already putting that in there. So we have some disagreements even with our ally in South Korea.
Yeah.
So and that's a democratic system, so they have to go through the machinations that we do, whereas the North Koreans don't.
The difference, though, and I think that what has to be pointed out is that as a country, as the U.S., once they have this capability to fire upon us, South Korea depends completely on us for their defense. We get to make the call at the end of the day.
Right.
I mean, they may not like it, and as Skip said, they may not let us put in some of the defense systems, but we could take out this regime at a moment's notice once they are a threat to us directly. Not just our troops who are in South Korea, not just to South Koreans, but to us directly. And if they have the ability to fire a ICBM into the United States, whether that's Hawaii, whether that's Alaska, whether that's California, then it doesn't. If you are, remember, the president's first job is not to protect South Korea. The president's first job as commander-in-chief is to protect us.
And that was a missile that you served in South Korea as well.
Absolutely, yes. As a matter of fact, I was actually stationed at the place where yesterday the United States did their show of force with anti-missile missiles. Yeah, and when I was living there was a lot of animosity still from between Japan and South Korea because of all the atrocities and what have you. But at the same time, what I discovered when I lived there is that the South Koreans and the Japanese are united in 2 areas. Their complete, allegiance and dependency upon the United States of America and their fear of North Korea. They realize that there is a threat north of the DMZ, and they live with that threat every day.
So, Skip, how did you were there as well? Do you think do the South Koreans understand the nature of, I'm sure the government does, of what's going on right now?
I think they do, but they're looking for a way out that will preclude any type of belligerency.
Right.
And I don't disagree with that, but the options are getting fewer and fewer as North Korea gets stronger.
Let's take some calls. We got a lot of calls coming in.
Yeah, a lot of people have been holding for a while. Let's go. Let's take some of those. Dave is calling in California on line 5.
Hi, Dave. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Hello.
Hi, Dave.
How you doing? I just had a comment. I agreed with your guest and all that about North Korea. I think they're kind of I don't know how you say it for lack of a better word, working for China anyway. I think China's just letting them do what they want to do, and all this testing is to benefit them because they would have already cut them off on everything.
Right. I think what the president said in his latest statement is that the trade between China and North Korea grew almost 40% in the first quarter. So much for China working with us, but we had to give it a try. There you go. I mean, I think that kind of, Jordan, sums it all up. I think now, that does not mean the Chinese cannot be pressured again. And believe me, the threats that they have will be significant in that regard.
Yes, I mean, the Chinese rely a lot on us. We allow them to get away with this currency manipulation. And they again, another regime which is kind of like in the middle between capitalist and human rights abusers. So not as bad as the North Koreans, but certainly they also have a mostly what they call peasant population, which is starving.
Yeah.
But is still Maoist. I mean, so they have that same kind of issue there where if you actually get outside of the major cities, the Beijings, the Shanghais, you still have hardcore communist farmers basically in this community in the rural areas. So they're not going to do anything out of goodwill. It's only going to come from pressure from the United States. But I go back to this. At the end of the day, if they really do have the capability to hit us with an ICBM, to hit us with an ICBM, then the job of the commander-in-chief, yes, you have to worry about South Korea, yes, you have to worry about our troops there, but you don't have to worry about the Russian border, the Chinese border, because now they're a threat to us, and his job is to protect Americans, not the Russians or the Chinese or the South Koreans.
Yep.
This is a dire situation, too, very dire. And ultimately, unless the international community can really come together and isolate North Korea, what's going to happen, Jay, is we will be faced with a binary choice, either ultimately military action or allowing North Korea to have nuclear weapons.
Well, that's going to do it for the broadcast today. A lot of issues at stake. Pray for the president. Pray for those in authority. Pray for our leaders, our military men and women in harm's way. This is a serious situation with North Korea. We've laid that out for you today. We'll keep you posted on this. But again, a major situation developing for the United States and, of course, the people in the region, especially South Korea. But look, an ICBM could reach the United States. Very, very serious. Don't forget our matching challenge also at ACLJ.org. That's ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255. As we engage all these issues, including at international tribunals like the United Nations, your voice makes a big difference. Your support for the work of the ACLJ also makes a big difference. You can do that at ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255. We'll see you next week.
It is a critical time for our nation, and the American Center for Law and Justice is on the front lines, defending life and liberty, engaging the issues that matter most to you and your family. Whether it's working to protect Americans from the dangers of radical Islam and the persecution of Christians, to defending life at the U.S. Supreme Court, to protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms, we could not do this work without you, without your support. And now your support can really make a tremendous difference. For a limited time, you can participate in the ACLJ Matching Challenge. If you make a gift now, it will be doubled. $25 becomes $50. A $100 gift becomes $200. Please stand with the ACLJ right now and call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or go online at aclj.org. Thank you for your support.